Welcome back. Today I'm going to be watching and reacting to the video of the history of Australia, just an animated history of Australia, and I hope it's more general. I honestly don't know too much about Australia or their history, but I'm curious to see what they have to say and what I'm definitely going to learn a lot. I would love to go to Australia someday. I haven't been that far yet. Long flight, but I mean, everyone you meet from Australia is really, I guess, cool. Very, very nice, friendly, open, and fun people, and with fun accents. So let's see what this is all about, and let's see what we could learn.
Aristotle, Ptolemy, and Macrobius believed that there was far too much land in the northern hemisphere, and that there must be some undiscovered continent balancing the globe somewhere in the south. Okay, so the logic was a little flawed, but during the Age of Discovery, the search was on for Terra Australis Incognito. Fast forward a few centuries to the East Indies. 3 Dutch sailors landed in Australia accidentally in the 1600s. The mythical southern continent had just been found.
It's just so massive too, it's crazy. Wow. Okay, I was gonna say that jumped real fast. What's their intro? All right,
Australia was the last of the New World to be discovered, because let's be honest, nobody cares about Antarctica. Australia was of course already inhabited. Indigenous Australians, also known as Aborigines, had a population of between 300 and 700,000 by modern estimates. Early contacts with these tribes were as often peaceful as they were violent.
It was random, but I just wonder what that is compared to just America, the US, and Canada. Before, just the Native Americans, how many there were estimated before, we kind of unfortunately wiped them out.
It is thought that these groups arrived in 2 stages. The first was from the Indian subcontinent via a land bridge that connected Australia to the island of New Guinea, bringing with them the Pama-Nyungan language family. The second wave was much later and may have been groups related to the Austronesians of Indonesia. Their culture and history was preserved through the oral tradition. The Dutch named the island New Holland after the county of Holland in the Netherlands, but it wasn't until the British landed on the east coast and named it New South Wales that Europeans began to settle. Landing in Port Jackson on the 26th
Alright, I'm already learning a lot. Dutch were there first.
1788.
Classic.
Hey, that's today. The so-called First Fleet arrived to found the colony of Sydney, with the intention of using the labor of prisoners to achieve wealth for Britain.
However, there we go. Prisoners were dumped off there. I was kind of on the right lines, but man, that's interesting.
Contrary to Australia's convict founding myth, less than half of this first fleet were actually convicts. In the 1800s, Australia was circumnavigated, mapped, and new colonies started springing up all over. Hobart, Newcastle, Launceston, Port Macquarie, Brisbane, and Melbourne, with dozens of penal centres. Adelaide and Perth were founded as free settlement cities, but the latter was made into a penal colony after it failed to grow naturally. As the Europeans expanded, the frontier wars began with the Aboriginals, many of whom were hostile to the foreign invaders. Most famously, the Black War of Tasmania, which nearly wiped out the indigenous Tasmanians. But far more destructive to the Aboriginals was smallpox, which killed tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Australia's growth would stagnate until the 1850s gold rush, which drew hundreds and thousands of settlers from all around the world in search for wealth, particularly in New South Wales and what would become Victoria. This would forever change Australia's character with new...
So they kind of had... I'm in California, and that's where, gold rush was here, and that's what brought so many people here. But it looks like the same thing happened in Australia, and that's why so many people flocked
free settlers
there.
Overshadowing its convict past, bringing with them their ideas of European Enlightenment, the American self-determinism, and the Chinese hatred for the British. These gold diggers became discontent with the corrupt and badly run colonial elites and rose up in rebellion in the infamous Eureka Stockade. These settlers were beginning to feel a sense of nationalism, that perhaps Australia could be something different. The winds of change were on Terra Australis, and soon, large-scale trade unions developed in Australia's largely working-class population from the ideas of orthodox Marxists. Trade unions still hold a significant influence over Australian politics today.
But let's not forget the rift that had been forming between Australia and Australians, the government and its people. Thousands of ex-convicts were being released each year, most of them turning to civil jobs, but a sizable minority turned to Australia's bushy frontier, for freedom and profits. Policing was harsh, but order couldn't reach far enough. Outside of the cities, only personal gain and wealth could drive law enforcement. Money would change hands and lips were sealed. In this climate, an Australian icon was born, Ned Kelly. Famous for his tin hat Robin Hood thievery, infamous for his cop killing and town raids, and recognisable everywhere for that nifty bulletproof suit.
Wow.
For more on one of the most well-known cornerstones of Australian folklore, come to my channel, Feature History, and check out my video on Old Ned.
Okay, so besides bulletproof suits or whatever, most Aussie colonies were granted self-governing status and united to form the Commonwealth of Australia in 1901, a dominion of the British Crown. The new Australian government was very quick to open up a new dark chapter in Aboriginal history, the infamous Stolen Generation. Beginning in 1905, the government began rounding up half-castes, a term which is now highly offensive, and settled them into white families with the intention of breeding out their Aboriginal blood in a form of cultural genocide. Abuses of these children were also rampant, which is a rather depressing segue into the White Australia policy, a set of strict settlement acts which restricted immigration from anyone who wasn't British or Northern European up until about the Second World War. As a British colony, Australia would unilaterally declare war on Germany during the First World War, forming the Australia and New Zealand Army Corps, or ANZACs. The young nation was sent headfirst into war. Around 500,000 soldiers volunteered, or nearly 1/10 of the total population.
Dang.
The baptism of fire came during the Gallipoli campaign, when more than 8,000 men lost their lives in the failed invasion of Turkey, an event etched into the memory of the Australian zeitgeist. Although crippled from the Great Depression, Australia again took up arms in 1939 to support her mother nation in the Second World War, this time fighting in Europe, North Africa, the Pacific, and South Asia. Prisoners of war in Malaya, Burma, and Thailand were treated inhumanely by the Japanese, who also bombed Australia's northern coast about 100 times.
I didn't know that Japan was bombing Australia's coast. Just a little bit, it seems like, but maybe not. Maybe a lot, but you never really hear about that at all. It's wild. Wow.
Australia is still a very young nation, but it has emerged a very powerful force in the region. Now a beacon of democracy, social progressivism, and commerce, with its phenomenal urbanization consistently ranked among the world's most livable cities, walking the line between left and right with generous social programs, universal suffrage, a welcoming immigration policy, and attractive business prospects. This is John. John wants to learn how to play the didgeridoo he bought from a garage sale, but the lessons are expensive, so John will probably give up. But wait, John, you can learn for free over at Skillshare. In just 17 minutes with Paul Carlos, you can take a beginner's course.
We'll stop there at the Opera House. Yeah, I thought that was a good video. That was a good, very, very, very basic overview of Australia. And even it being that basic, I learned a lot. I mean, my main interests, I guess, are more, and where I've been is more Europe. So I know fairly more about that, but there's still so much more to learn. That's why I like watching these videos. And like I said, I want to go to Australia someday. I don't think it's in the cards for the next couple of years, but hopefully soon. It's a very interesting country, you know, definitely one of a kind. And just looking at their cities when you see them on TV, and I watch a lot of tennis, so watching the tournaments there and everything makes me really want to go to Australia. And the people that I do know that have been to Australia have really, really loved it and want to go back. So until next time, I'm going to do more videos on Australia and, you know, around the world. That's what this is all about, and learn more. And until next time, thank you for watching and have a good rest of the day.